Greetings, and thank you for listening to this podcast. I have a short announcement for you before we get started, and it is this. Over the past 5 years or so, this podcast has been focused on the myths, epics, fairy tales, and stories of the world. And I will continue to do that. But I've decided also to broaden this podcast to include poetry as well. Why would I do that? Well, I came to storytelling through poetry. And in many ways, it is because of poetry that I'm able to tell stories. I tell the stories through the poetry. Poetry has taught me a great deal, and in the big picture, they are related arts, very close to one another. And as you can probably tell, I'm really just going for the whole bardic experience here, where poetry, story, and music are mingled and are in fact a single art. That's what I aspire to. It's also what has sort of happened to me as I have lived my life. So today, that's what you have, is a podcast focused on a poem. And if you're looking for a story, there are many others, and I will be recording those hopefully very soon. So that's my announcement, and thank you for listening to this podcast. This is a recording I did some weeks ago, and let's get started. Here's a poem for you by the American poet Sharon Olds, who was born in San Francisco in 1942. The poem is titled California Swimming Pool. On the dirt, the dead live oak leaves lay like dried-out turtle shells, scorched and crisp, their points sharp as wasps' stingers. Sated mosquitoes hung in the air like sharks in water, and when you held up a tuna sandwich, a gold sphere of yellow jackets formed around your hand in the air and moved when you moved. Everything circled around the great pool, blue and glittering as the sacred waters at Crocodilopolis. And the boys came from under water like that to pull you down. But the true center was the dressing rooms, the wetsuits, the smell of chlorine, cold concrete, the splintered pine wall, on the other side of which were boys, actually naked there in air clouded as the shadows at the bottom of the pool, where the crocodiles glistened in their slick skins. All summer the knothole in the wall hissed at me, "Come see, come see, come eat and be eaten." Hello, and welcome to the Crane Bag Podcast. I am Jay Leeming. Today we are going to explore a poem by the American poet Sharon Olds. Thank you for joining me. Let us begin. Well, let's hear that poem one more time. California Swimming Pool. On the dirt, the dead live oak leaves lay like dried-out turtle shells, scorched and crisp, their points sharp as wasps' stingers. Sated mosquitoes hung in the air like sharks in water, and when you held up a tuna sandwich, a gold sphere of yellow jackets formed around your hand in the air and moved when you moved. Everything circled around the great pool, blue and glittering as the sacred waters at Crocodilopolis, and the boys came from under water like that to pull you down. But the true center was the dressing rooms, the wetsuits, the smell of chlorine, cold concrete, the splintered pine wall, on the other side of which were boys, actually naked there, in air clouded as the shadows at the bottom of the pool, where the crocodiles glistened in their slick skins. All summer the knothole in the wall hissed at me, "Come see, come see, come eat and be eaten." This poem comes from the book The Gold Cell, published in 1987 by Alfred A. Knopf, Incorporated. I find it quite an amazing poem. And as often happens in poetry, we have the events before us and we have this undertow, we have this secret life below them, which is in some ways more resonant than the actual things around us. And the way she accesses that realm is through simile and metaphor. She compares the things she's experiencing to other things. It's all there right in the first line. On the dirt, the dead live oak leaves. Now that's neither a simile nor a metaphor, but from the beginning we start out with dead and live, like right there. What's this poem about? What is this poem circling around? Rebirth, death, sex. It's all right there. On the dirt, the dead live oak leaves. They're live oak leaves. I mean, that's a species of tree, a live oak, but the leaves are dead on the ground. How can that be? What does that mean, that the live oak has dead leaves? Well, it means these two are mingled. These two are one, perhaps. So that's the first line. On the dirt, the dead live oak leaves lay like dried out turtle shells. So right away, they're compared to something else through a simile. Dried out turtle shells. They're like turtles, but they're like the shells, in fact. The turtle is dead. It's empty. All we have is the shell of the turtle. So again, we have death coming in right away. These leaves are like, dead turtles. And then the third line, scorched and crisp, their points sharp as wasps' stingers. So already reality is sort of, it wants to mess with us. These leaves are scorched and crisp. I can just feel that. I can feel like a dried leaf, especially when you're barefoot and you don't want to step on anything sharp. And there they are, scorched and crisp, their points sharp as wasps' stingers. So all she's doing is describing leaves on the ground, but we're in a realm in which life and death are present, ever present, and they're there even in the leaves, clearly. And they are hostile to us in a way. They're sharp as wasps' stingers, right? And then we get sated mosquitoes hung in the air like sharks in water. So mosquitoes are like sharks. Wild. And not only that, they're sated mosquitoes. So, which is more spooky? Which is more disturbing? That the mosquitoes are hungry, or that they've been hungry and they've already eaten? They've already had their meal of blood, right? Just as sharks, eat fish in the sea, so the mosquitoes eat us. It's just fantastic how many animals are in this poem. We're describing a swimming pool, for crying out loud. And we've got turtles, we've got wasps, we've got mosquitoes, and we've got sharks. And it's not going to stop there. Sated mosquitoes hung in the air like sharks in water, and when you held up a tuna sandwich, a gold sphere of yellow jackets formed around your hand in the air and moved when you moved. So the yellow jackets are hungry as well, and they are persistent, who hasn't experienced that, right? At a picnic or whatever, you're eating outside and these yellow jacket wasps just won't leave you alone, and they're so intense on the on the apple, on the pie, on the sandwich you got there. So they move when you move, like you're being watched, you're being tracked, you're being hunted. Really, that's what it's saying. So there we are. That's the first 9 lines, and we've got dead leaves, we've got turtle shells, wasps, mosquitoes, sharks, a tuna sandwich, not a peanut butter and jelly, a dead fish, right? and then yellow jackets, Everything circled around the great pool. So she moves from the circular pattern, the spherical pattern of the yellow jackets around your hand, to a larger circling of this entire scene, which is centered on the great pool. And at this point, we kind of have to ask ourselves, what is being described? I mean, this is a swimming pool, but it could as well be like a watering hole in Africa surrounded by animals. I mean, that's the feeling it seems to have, right? Everything circled around the great pool, blue and glittering as the sacred waters at Crocodilopolis. What a great name, huh? And I don't know, I look at that and I'm like, well, she just thought that name was really cool and wanted to put it in a poem. I looked it up. It is an Egyptian city that's very old, where there was a sacred crocodile that was worshipped. So it fits, but still, just the name is fantastic, So the waters of this swimming pool are like the sacred waters. It was a place in honor of, or a place to honor a crocodile god, right? And the boys came from underwater like that to pull you down. So we know the boys aren't out to kill people at the pool, but if you've grown up going to swimming pools, that's something that certain boys might do, is just play tricks on other people and pull them down into the water. And within this environment, this mood of death and animals hunting you, it takes on a particularly sort of dark quality, even though it's just a prank, right? But, well, that's the way pranks are, huh? They have a dark quality. But the true center was the dressing room. So again, she's circling around something and she's trying to get to it. And I love that she's on this quest. And I love that by reading this, we are a part of it, There is an instinct to get at the truth, which for her is like, what's really at stake here? What is the center of this? And what she's approaching is not some sort of explanation of the situation, but an image, something which can speak for this entire reality, and she's going to get there. But the true center was the dressing rooms, the wet suits, the smell of chlorine, cold concrete, the splintered pine wall. Once again, this rhymes with my own experience of a swimming pool, and there you are. It's such a it's a pleasant experience to swim often, but it's also terrifying. And you're going to be naked beforehand, and there's this weird smell of chlorine, like it's a laboratory, and the concrete is cold. The pine wall is splintered. It's not smooth. It's a tree which has been, violently transformed into a pine wall. Is that going too far? Well, it's what I see. It's what I feel in this poem. On the other side of which were boys, actually naked there. I remember thinking that, of course. You're young, you're 12 years old or whatever, and you're just like, wow, there's actually naked girls over there. There's naked boys over here. It's just weird. What does that mean? Crazy. Actually naked there, in air clouded as the shadows at the bottom of the pool, where the crocodiles glistened in their slick skins. So in that sentence, she's bringing it together, the nakedness of any of us when we're changing out of our clothes and getting ready to swim, and that connected for her with the bottom of the pool, where the crocodiles might devour you. But that's not quite it. That's not quite the center of this poem. And then finally we get what, for her, it seems to me, is the center of this whole scene. All summer the knothole in the wall hissed at me, come see, come eat and be eaten. There's so much in that sentence. The knothole is beckoning. It's scary, but it's inviting. You want to look through the wall and have knowledge of what the other gender's actually like, naked, right? But to do so is to be eaten, right? To see the girls or the boys, whatever, is to eat and to be eaten. It's suddenly to take part in this great circle of death and life and rebirth, which we all, by living, are a part of course. But we live in innocence as children, and then we start to have moments like this where we're like, oh, okay, I am a body, I am a being, I am an animal, and I will someday die. And I get to eat, and I get to taste the honey, and I also get to die. That's part of the deal. It's fascinating also. She says, all summer the knothole in the wall hissed at me. So this isn't just a one-time thing. Like, she returned, right? I mean, this was a repeated moment she had in this room at this pool, which gives it a sense of ritual for me. It's something you return to. You come back to this awareness. Also, it's something you survive. You don't just go to the pool and just die. You come back. And this awareness is consistently there and persistently there, and you are a part of it. And so it's mingled for me, that line, with the fascination and the terror of that moment. You want to come back. So you want to go swimming? Yeah, let's go swimming again. Let's go again, And it's kind of creepy each time, and it's kind of wonderful each time. So that's why all summer the knothole in the wall hissed at me, come see, come eat and be eaten. So I find this an extraordinary poem, and it's a great example of what Sharon Olds does so well, which for me is to dive down into something and really get at the foundation of something. Like, what's it all about? There's this sense of kind of scouring a moment down, making it shine with something beyond the ordinary, and of seeing the eternal in that singular moment, that particular moment of her at the pool in the summer, of any of us at the pool in the summer. And there are those who've criticized her work for exactly that. I mean, it's a gift which can become a weakness. It's a strength which can become a weakness. Because repeatedly in her work, she often takes complex situations, especially within families, and reduces them to a single truth, And it's wonderfully invigorating and strong. They're poems of power, really, individual power. But you could also say, well, maybe it's more complicated than that. Maybe there's more than one truth here. And certainly at the swimming pool, well, it's wonderful too, right? I mean, you could write a poem about how wonderful it is to go swimming in the summer. What's wrong with that? But her experience here, it fits my own, and it feels true to me. So I don't have a problem with it at all. Really, she's a third chakra poet, a belly chakra poet, which in the chakra system of India, that's the chakra of individuality, of like, who am I, and of being strong in yourself, the chakra system. Well, you can look it up, right? The chakra system. We know the chakras, right? Beginning at the root and then going to the sexuality, and then they get the belly, which is this like, I am this. And then we get the heart. And then we get the throat, the voice, expression. Then we get the spiritual chakras up there, insight in the forehead, and then the very top, openness to the divine. So she feels to me like a third chakra poet, a poet of like, this is me, I am strong, here I am. And over again in her poems, she witnesses something and sort of testifies to what she has seen or has lived through. So there's a heroic quality to her work, which is just fantastic. And she comes out of the 70s, feminism. I mean, it feels harsh to just reduce her to that. I wouldn't want to reduce her to that. But that's where she sort of starts out, inspired by poets like Muriel Rukeyser, for example, claiming your truth, in just a fantastic way. And also courageously claiming realms of experience not covered and not explored in poetry before, particularly women's experience, of the body, of giving birth, of sex. All these things are there. So just a terrific poet for that, and courageous in that way. And why am I in particular drawn to her work? Well, who can say why some poems grab us, some poets grab us? But I think for me, growing up and being, somewhat stomped on by bullies, by, the world around me, being shy, not like I lived through a war or anything, not like I was, severely oppressed because of my skin color or gender preference or something like that. But nevertheless, whatever. I mean, I went through public school and was fairly, introverted, awkward fellow at the time. And so in her work, I find this tremendous assertion of individuality, which has been healing for me. Like, oh, wow, I'm a person. I have this experience, whatever it is. And to claim that, it's just very beautiful and very healing. Beautiful the way a hawk, grabbing a mouse, or an osprey grabbing a fish is beautiful. And it comes glistening out of the water, and you're like, aha, look at that. There it is. It's alive. Wow. And I'm recording this in 2025. I'm not supposed to date these things, am I? But it's real. It's a thing. It's a bubble. It's floating away. It's gone, this podcast. She's still with us and still writing marvelously. I was lucky enough to spend some time with her once. It was a poetry sort of week with a lot of famous poets, and then me, who was definitely not famous, but I was there. And there was this cafeteria we got to go to, and for some reason, she and I were the ones who got up. It wasn't that early, but I don't know. We got up, and I would have breakfast with her, like for, 4 or 5 days in a row. And she was so kind and gracious, to be with. And it was really great. And I was sort of taken aback because her poems are such fire-breathing poems, I expected some sort of fire-breathing person. And, well, we all are. We all have these multiple selves, right? And they all are expressed in different ways. I remember one day she took me to see some bees. That's it. It was just a little place nearby. This is at the Omega Institute. And there were some bees living in the ground. I guess wasps, technically. And there was a little sign next to them saying, ooh, look out for the bees. Don't bother the bees. And she came and she showed me the bees. And, it's something anyone could have done, I like bees. Sure, I might have been the person to show someone the bees. But knowing her work, I can't help but relate those bees to her poems, which are filled with a beautiful honey and revel in the sweetness of being alive, but are also aware of death and of how the two things are mingled, and how these bees, which create such sweetness, also have a sting. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are more episodes on my website, which is jayleeming.com, jayleeming.com. If you are able to support this podcast, please do so. You can do that at patreon.com/storyjo. Thanks for listening, and take care.